G'day guys, how are you going? Today we are having a look at the brand new AMX Cda 105. Now this tank is set to be probably one of the most controversial tanks introduced into the world of tanks because guys, this tank is absolutely monstrous. As always guys, we're going to start off with the history of this tank, then we're going to move into the top 3 quirks and then the bottom 3 quirks of this tank, giving it a brand score, going through all of its statistics, having a look at some ace tanker gameplay, and then I'm going to give you my final thoughts on this tank and whether or not this tank should make an appearance into your garages. On to the history of the tank. So the Canon de Assaut de 105, I'm sure I butchered that, tank destroyer is a combat vehicle designed, developed by the AMX company in 1958, so very much a post-World War II tank. Now according to archive records, this tank was supposed to have high maneuverability and mobility combined with reliable armor of up to 100mm on the front of the tank and a very powerful 105mm gun capable of punching through enemy armor. Now later the development was actually discontinued and no prototypes were ever actually built, so this tank kind of existed in the minds of people and maybe on a few pieces of paper, but it certainly was never ever truly developed. Now let's get on to the top 3 and the bottom 3 quirks of this tank. So the top 3 quirks are that the standard shell velocity of this tank is a whopping 1525 meters per second. You pretty much don't even have to lead on your targets. If they're moving, it'll just go straight into them. It is really good guys. Also, it is incredibly speedy and able to reach its top speed with absolute ease with a very strong power to weight ratio. Also guys, it has laser-like accuracy and aiming time with its main cannon, meaning that combined with that shell velocity, this thing is very much a point and click tank. Now onto the bottom 3 quirks of this tank, and that is that the traverse speed of this tank is not very great and it can be prone to being outflanked, although it's not that terrible, but it's really guys, it's not a very great turning speed or traverse speed of this tank considering how fast it can go. Also the side and rear armor of this tank are incredibly poor, with the side armor able to be overmatched by anything above 120mm of caliber. I think that's how you say it anyway. Any gun 120 caliber or over will be able to go straight through the side of the armor and will have absolutely no issue in terms of being prone to bouncing, so that's something you do need to consider as well. Also, it has a very limited gun arc. It must move the tracks quite often from left to right, and it doesn't have great hidden dispersion values, so when it does that, it can throw off the aim quite a bit. So now let's give this tank a brand score. So the DPM of this tank is 2034.78, giving it a 6 out of 10. Penetration wise, the penetration of this tank with its standard rounds is 260mm, giving it a 7 out of 10. Gun handling wise, the shown dispersion value of this tank is 0.30, giving it a 3 out of 5, while the hidden dispersion value average of this tank is 0.18, giving it a 4 out of 5. Aiming time wise, the aiming time of this tank is 2 seconds flat, giving it an 8 out of 10. And gun vertical movement wise, or the gun depression and the gun elevation of this tank, well, the gun depression of this tank is 8 degrees, giving it a 3 out of 5, while the gun elevation of this tank is 20 degrees, giving it another 3 out of 5. Now let's have a look at the armor schematics in a tank viewer so we can see just how the armor of this tank works. So having a look at the armor, we can see that if we're looking at it flat dead on, it's okay. It's going from about 160mm anywhere to 200 or so millimeters with a weak spot cupola on the top, and yeah, it's just pretty average armor with 40mm on the side as well over this area here and 30mm at the back. But guys, this armor is very deceiving because once you start using that gun depression, let's say we want to have a look at the very low 8 degrees of gun depression, we can start to get very insane angles here of anywhere between 300mm to 170, 180 at the top at the weak spot, but that is quite hard to hit. And of course, hopefully we can hide the lower plate, which is very weak indeed. and anything can really go through it. But guys, if we can hide that, we can get insane armor values here. And I find with this tank that I do bounce a significantly high amount of shells considering its armor. But yeah, don't even think about the side or the rear armor of this tank. It is so poor, anything will be able to overmatch it effectively. Not anything, but it can be very easily overmatched, that's for sure. And so the armor on this tank is very hit or miss. You've got to get lucky with the angles, and the angles on this tank is just so absurd that it's hard to get the right angles, intentionally anyway. Sometimes you just get wacky bounces here and there, but otherwise, guys, yeah, it's got pretty good armor, but for survivability, I'm still going to give this tank a 6 out of 10 because yeah, it can be good, but only in select situations, and otherwise it can actually be quite poor. Now, having a look at the mobility of this tank, so the power to weight ratio of this tank is an insane 26.79 horsepower to ton, giving it a 4 out of 5, while the average traverse speed of this tank is just 27, giving it a 2 out of 5. View range wise, the view range of this tank is 360 meters, giving it an 8 out of 10, and the concealment while stationary value, or the camouflage value whilst not moving or firing the gun, is quite high at 21.66%, giving this tank a 9 out of 10. So value wise, well, I'm just going to straight up say that this tank is awesome, and that comes down to its great and very arguably overpowered stats. It's a fun tank to play, and although its shell cost is rather high at about 1210, I believe, don't quote me there, it is also a relatively profitable tank anyway. I found that I've made pretty good amount of money or credits in each game I've played, so it's not something that you should concern yourself with too much. So value wise, guys, if you are looking for a very, very capable tier 8 premium tank destroyer, then you really cannot look past this brand new AMX Cda 105. In my opinion, it's even better than the STRV S1, which already is a very, very good tank destroyer. And also for new players as well, this thing is very, very forgiving, because with that amazing accuracy and that shell velocity, this tank is pretty much a point and click tank, and the armor can be quite reliable at times as well, especially if you're top tier. If you're top tier in this tank, it's like playing an IS-3. It's just such a bully. But anything tier 9, tier 10, it can be a bit hit or miss, but using that gun depression, wow, you can get some insane values on this tank. So guys, I'm gonna have to give this tank a solid 10 out of 10. It is just a really good tank, although arguably, guys, it is overpowered as well. Thus, guys, the final brand score for this tank is an insane 73 out of 100. Of course, remember, guys, the brand score is a measure of overpoweredness compared to tier, so just think about it. If you have a look at the other tanks, this tank rates, I think, pretty much the highest at the moment on the brand score list, so just think about that. Enough mumbling, let's have a look at some Ace Tanker replay so I can show you just how well this tank performs in game. So friends, here we are on Fisherman's Bay. Of course, this is not a great matchup for us, being a tier 10 match, but I guess it could be worse. I don't even know with this new matchmaking system, but anyway, we are bottom tier, but that is not going to stop us, and you will see just how good this tank can perform even when it is bottom tier. Now, the funny thing about this as well is look how fast it is moving, guys. We've been able to reach our top speed of 55 quite easily. Remember that this tank has an insane power to weight ratio, better than even a lot of light tanks, so we're not going to struggle too much to get to the speed at which we need to go, and we're going to be able to move and shift into position very quickly. You can see we're taking quite an offensive position up here. This was one of my earlier games in this tank, so I wasn't really 100% sure how this game tank would handle. I thought that this tank had better armor than it really does, which is kind of meh. But you can just see here, guys, how insane the gun is. Of course, that was a missed shot, and then we just missed the opportunity to take out that Rheinmetall Borsig, or at least get a hit on him, because in the end, guys, we do very much take him out. Now, did you see how quickly that shell traveled and how quickly the aiming circle just goes to naught? We are able to very quickly put in shot after shot into enemy tanks with no real issue at all. And penetration wise, guys, this thing does not struggle. 260 millimeters of penetration is insane. And just look at that shot. As soon as we clicked, it went into the T-54 on the enemy team. T-54 E1, I should say. So that wasn't a struggle in the slightest. yeah, we're really not having too many issues with this tank. The one thing that you might notice as well is that the gun does have a very limited traverse angle and traverse movement, so we do have to move the tracks quite a lot, and when you do that, the dispersion value of I think 0.22 really does affect how the gun moves. So I take a blind shot there as well, trying to hit that AMX 48 MLE, the tier 8 non-premium French tank destroyer, but you could see how we were very quickly able to get the shot into that STRV 103B. Now the one thing you'll notice as well, the many things you'll notice, but this thing as well especially, is how accurate the gun is. It really does almost every time go into where you want it to go, because it has very insanely good accuracy. I mean, I think on this setup I've got here, I've got about 0.28 accuracy, which is crazy. You know, that's something like the Wolfentrager. Oh, not the Wolfentrager, the, what's that tier 10 German tank destroyer? Oh my god, I've lost the name of it. But you know the one, the Grilla 15. It's very much just like that in terms of being able to go and hit the enemy with very laser-like accuracy. And you can see there, we're just able to get in shot after shot with this tank. It's not something that we struggle with at all, especially with that accuracy, guys. This thing is very much, I can't reiterate it enough, is such a point-and-click tank and does a great job at it as well. So far it's been a pretty average game. We've done just under 1500 damage, where the team is winning. It seems like we've got this game kind of in the bag, especially considering our left flank here is just able to completely decimate the flank and take over all the tanks. To be fair, we have very heavily armored tanks, but you can see that the town is struggling a little bit there, but we've got some very strong tanks there as well, so that's not something we have to worry about too much. We try and get a shot off at that AMX 5100, but don't quite seem to find it again. And here we see the Panther 88 running across our screen, so we want to try and get a shot off into that, but even that is quite difficult. And then we spot that T-34, which is sitting out in the open, and we try and get a shot into it, but it goes right into the gun mantlet, or into the gun. Regardless, we don't get the penetrating shot, so I guess the accuracy there, you can see, is not incredible, but it is pretty incredible, guys. It'll go most of the time, it'll go right where you want it to go, which is really awesome in this tank. But for spotting him, we did get some spotting damage, so you know, can't complain too much, I suppose. But we're going to be a bit of a bully here and try and take out these enemy tanks. At first, that Panther 88 misses. I was going to sit back and wait for it to pop out, but I thought, no way, I'm just going to go up and try and hit it. We roll very high, doing 447 damage, and we also get some more spotting damage for that T-34, so great. Nothing wrong with that. We push up knowing that really we're not going to have any issues, and with the Panther 88, and he could very well bounce. So that's what happened, so I guess it worked out for the best, right? And here we say we're going to be a bully for that T-34. Now the T-34 can very easily go through the front of the hull of this tank, but it just fired. We know that its reload is like 14 seconds or something ridiculously long, so I'm not going to struggle with that. And here you can see that we're having no issues shifting into position, and here I thought that I actually got an ammo rack on the tank. I was very excited, but unfortunately I just finished it off. Didn't quite get the ammo racking shot. But so far, guys, we've done just over 3,000 damage, so not too bad at all. 3,300 really. And now we're going to really push up into the city. You can see just how fast this tank shifts. We're already in the city. It feels like a second ago we were on the other side of the map. We have no issue. So I prioritize that E100 because I know I can get more damage or experience off the E100, but also it is a very dangerous and formidable tank. But then I've got the juicy ass of that T-34. I want to be able to try and set it on fire. Unfortunately, I don't set it on fire, but I did damage to it, so I probably took out, damaged his engine or damaged his fuel tanks, but no matter, we reload in time and we're able to take him out, getting our 5th kill for the game. And here you can see I make a bit of a mistake there. I don't quite prioritize that IS-3, which I could have, because I want to take out that Nameless and get the final kill, and I have absolutely no idea where that shell went. Probably into the turret, but it bounces, so we don't quite get our 6th kill there. We get shot in the flank by the by what tank is that? The Jag Tiger. So, and that does take out our fuel tank and set us on fire. And that's something I've also noticed in this tank, guys. Often this tank can be set on fire, unfortunately, because the fuel tanks are quite juicy and they do get taken out, especially from the front, guys. I've noticed if a shell goes through the front of this tank right below the bottom, then that can be a very, very big issue indeed, and often it just doesn't work out in our favor and the tank gets set on fire. But anyway, let's have a look at just how well we did in the game. The stats for this tank I've had to keep secret, so I've uploaded it. However, no one will actually be able to see it except for myself. So if you guys do want to see how I did in this game, remind me and I'll make the link available to everybody. But for now, I'm gonna have to keep it secret. Obviously, when this review comes out, it's no longer a secret, so maybe just remind me then, because I'll probably forget. But anyway, guys, let's have a look at the stats right now and see just how well I did in this game. So unsurprisingly, I suppose, I got a Mastery Badge, Ace Tanker, a Spotter Medal, a Bruiser Medal, a Fighter Medal, a Fire for Effect Medal, and a Tanker Sniper Medal. Now, this isn't a game where I got, you know, some epic medals or did amazingly well. I'm not an amazing player. In fact, this was a good game for me, so do keep that in mind. But we were able to pick up the most amount of damage, getting how many did we get? Well, we got 4 medals here, but we did 3,338 damage, which wasn't the most on my team, but we got the most kills. And because we were a tier 8 tank, we probably got the most experience considering our tier. And then if we have a look at the statistics, we fired 15 shots, of which 13 hit and 11 penetrated, and you know, a considerable amount of our damage was done from over 300 meters. So that should tell you guys that this tank is very accurate. I can't state it enough. This tank is so accurate. We also blocked 630 damage. I remember the second time, don't quite remember the first time. But anyway, guys, we blocked damage. So this tank does have relatively good armor, but of course, as people get used to this tank, know where its weak spot is, i.e. the bottom lower frontal plate, then yeah, you're not going to be able to block too many shots. We were also able to pick up 79,000 credits, which for, you know, this tank, it's not a crazy amount, especially for a tier 8 tank. It did cost us a lot for the ammunition, so that's something to keep in mind. If you want something that can make a lot of credits and you want a tank destroyer, maybe have a look at the STRV S1, which has very bloated credit making abilities, but we were able to get 1,292 base experience as well. So overall, guys, a pretty good game. Hopefully that shows you how well this tank can perform when playing against just standard teammates in a random battle, especially in a tier 10 game. But enough rambling on, guys. Let's go back to the garage and I'll give you my final thoughts on this tank and whether or not you guys should pick this up. So guys, what are my final thoughts on this tank, and will I pick it up myself? Well, the answer is that I really do think, guys, that this tank is quite overpowered. There really isn't any way around it. The only really bad things about it are its view range and maybe its traverse speed, but other than that, it's still a really good tank, guys. It's definitely a tank that I think is not going to be very frustrating. It doesn't really have a learning curve either, just because of how pointing and click this tank is. It's literally the epitome of point and click tank. So yes, I'm going to pick one up for myself. Should you buy it? If you're looking for a new premium tank, then I would probably recommend this one. It's just something that is very forgiving and quite fun to play as well. I've had so much fun playing it in the few days that I've been able to test it for. So yeah, guys, 100%, I think it's worth it. But anyway, guys, thank you so very much for watching. If you did like the video, please do consider leaving it a thumbs up. Also, comment down below. I do love to see your comments, and subscribe if you are new, because I also love to see that subscriber count going up. It means I'm doing a relatively okay job anyway. But anyway, guys, I'll catch you next time.